Alright, today I'm bringing you guys another Tiny Leaders Reborn deck profile. This time on Victor, Valgavoth'S Seneschal. And if you haven't noticed by now, Orzhov is my favorite color pairing, which is why I'm bringing you guys another Orzhov Commander. But let's go ahead and get started. So, if you guys aren't familiar with Victor, he costs 1 generic and Orzhov mana. He's a legendary creature, human warlock. He has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, you surveil 2. If this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn, you surveil 2, obviously. If it's the second time, each opponent discards a card. And if it's the third time, put a creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So the main objective of this deck, yes, I know he should be centered around enchantments, but I didn't want to put a lot of enchantments in this deck just to trigger his effect. Because sometimes that kind of forces you to play some wonky cards or less optimal cards, especially if there's like an instant or a sorcery that does an effect a lot better. I didn't want to cut like a lot of the black and white staples just to fit this, but I did want to play enough enchantments to take a bit advantage of his effect, so I kind of had to balance that out. Alright, so we'll go ahead and move on with the rest of the profile. So first off, let's talk about the creatures. Played quite a few of them. We'll start off with Lifestyle Inquisitor. This is a brand new creature out of the brand new set Edge of Eternities. Basically, I wanted to play, since Victor's second effect is basically a hand rip effect, where if it's the second time you resolve an enchantment during a turn, your opponent discards a card. And so to further, annoy your opponent with that, I thought about putting a Lifestyle Inquisitor, and I did. So basically, this comes into play. Your opponent has to exile a card out of their hand, and if they want to play it, it costs 1 extra generic mana. So yeah, that's why I put this in. Next, I have Optimistic Scavenger. This one, if you're familiar with like Duskmourn, you're really familiar with this effect, or the Azorius Eerie deck, you're familiar with this. So this gets really big the more enchantments you play, or you can make another creature bigger for the more enchantments you play. Plus, this is a 1-drop, so I said, yes, definitely going in here. And next, we have Nurturing Pixie. Very popular card in standard format. So you basically bounce back your enchantments and replay them again. That's really potent. Plus, with Victor's effect, you want to trigger him as much as possible. Alright, next, I wanted to put more of the bounce creatures in here. So that's why I'm playing Sunspear Kirin. Sunpearl Kirin. Love the fact that this has flash and it has flying, which is really great. You flash this in like during your opponent's end turn or whatever. Take advantage of your mana, and then you just bounce back another one of your enchantments, which is really good. Same thing from Ambrosia Whiteheart from the Final Fantasy set. It also has flash. It also has, well, I thought it had flying. It's a bird, and I don't see that it has flying on here. I think they really missed that, but it does have a long landfall trigger. But nonetheless, has flash. You bounce back another of your enchantments, so you play it again, get more value that way, especially if you're going to be triggering Victor again. And then we have the Old Faithful, the very popular popper inclusion of Core Skyfisher. It does have flying. Core Skyfisher does the same thing as the other guys. You bounce back one of your permanents you control to your hand, or the owner's hand in this case. And then, yeah, same effect as the other guys. And then, of course, I'm playing Spirited Companion. He's an enchantment creature that draws you a card that also triggers Victor. And then we have Starfield Mystic to make your enchantments cheaper. And since I am playing black, you gotta play Orcish Bowmasters. It's just too great of a card not to play if you're running black. Then we have a card that I just discovered a few weeks ago, and that is Torok Dread Cantor. And I wish I would have known about this guy, when I was playing my original deck, the Totolimo Papalimo, whatever. Papa Doc is what I call him. But yeah, I wish I really would have known about him when I was entering that one tournament I did a few weeks ago in Santa Rosa. But this guy is really, really good. I think if you're playing black, you should also see if you can fit this guy in. Obviously, I think Orcish Bowmasters is better, but having a card that you can rip 2 cards of your opponent's hand seems really potent and powerful, especially on a creature effect. Yes, you have to pay a kicker cost of 2 black, but I think that's worth it. Plus, he has protection from white, so he has protection from a lot of like things like Path to Exile and Source of Plowshare and whatnot. And plus, he just gets bigger the more cards you rip out of your opponent's hand, and this deck is really good at doing that. So that's why I included him. All right, then we have Mesa Enchantress. And whenever you cast an enchantment card, you spell, you draw a card. Really love the fact that it's not a once per turn. That you can just keep doing that and doing that and doing that as long as you have the resources. All right, so that's it for our creatures. I know it's not that high of a creature count, but definitely higher than my last deck. And next we have our sorceries, and I do have these out of order. I apologize for that. Let me put those back in order. All right, good. And next we have our hand rip cards. We have Inquisition of Kozilek along with our Thoughtseize, you know, and also along with him to Torok. So definitely these are the best hand rip cards in this format, so that's why we play them. So those are our hand rip cards. Next we have other sorceries, our removal such as Dam and Winds of Abandon, just in case things get a little hairy, just in case your opponents go wide. These are really good to be playing. Alright, that does it for our sorceries. Next we'll be looking at our instants. We have Cut Down, which I think should be basically almost a staple. I don't know, that's just my opinion. Maybe it's an uninformed opinion, but I really love this card. I also play on Magic Arena. I love to play Standard on there. And when this card rotated out, like last week, it was a little bit devastating. I think this is one of the best pieces of cheap, low-cost black removal. And any deck that I play black, I definitely want to include this. March of Otherworldly Lights, another white staple. Fatal Push, obviously another black staple. And speaking of more staples, your Source of Plowshares, your Path to Exiles. Anoint with Affliction, I think is really good because it exiles instead of banishes, or excuse me, it exiles instead of destroying. And to me, exiling is always better than destroying in most cases. And then since we are playing an enchantment deck, we are going to be running Enlightened Tutors to tutor out our enchantments, obviously. All right. So that does it for our instants. And next, the actual enchantments, the actual meat and potatoes itself of the deck. So first off, we have Ethereal Armor. Since we are playing, we're only playing like a 12 enchantments, which is not a lot. But like I said, I kind of wanted to find a balance to playing the enchantments and other things. I don't want to just fill the deck with enchantments just because they're enchantments. I want to make sure I'm playing good cards and good effects. And so Ethereal Armor, your creature gets bigger with more enchantments out there. Then we have one that I really love. I really love this card, and that's Flickering Ward. I like the artwork. For those of you not familiar with what this does, for 1 white mana, it's an enchant. It's an aura. When you play Flickering Ward, you choose a color. Enchanted creature gains protection from the chosen color, but that's not exactly why we're playing this. We're playing this because of this effect right here, and that's for 1 white mana. Return Flickering Ward to its owner's hand. So if you guys are seeing what I'm putting down, if you have Victor out and then you play Flickering Ward, as long as you have the mana to pay for it, you bounce it back, and then boom. So you activate it, you trigger the Surveil effect, and if you have the mana to pay for it, you bounce this back, you pay for it again, then you trigger the hand rip effect, and then if you have more mana, put this back in your hand and then play it again, and then boom, you trigger Victor's Reanimate effect. And I think that's just pretty good. I think that's pretty neat. There might be more effective ways, but I think this is like one of the coolest ways to do it. All right, our next enchantment that we're playing is Seam Rip. Might I add, I absolutely love the artwork on this card. I think it's absolutely amazing and beautiful, but anyways, I digress. This also came in the latest set, Edge of Eternities, and I really love this card. If you're not familiar, this is exactly like Portable Hole, except for the fact that the only difference between this and Portable Hole is this is an enchantment, which means it's a lot better in this deck, obviously. So, Seam Rip for 1 white mana. When this enchantment enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until this enchantment leaves the field. So, boom. Perfect card for this deck. It's removal. It's a cheap enchantment. This is a no-brainer to go into this deck. Next, we have Hopeless Nightmare, which, is just got banned in Standard recently, and for a good reason. It's a really cheap way to rip your opponent's cards, and it does burn. And then with our bounce creatures like Pixie and the Kirin and Core Skyfisher, you just keep bouncing this back, burning your opponent, making them discard cards, and then triggering Victor's effect. So I really love that. And next I'm playing Legion's Landing, another cheap enchantment that has a pretty good effect. You know, you play this, you bring out your vampire token that has lifelink, and then if you attack with 3 or more creatures in a turn, you transform this into a land, which can generate you more creature tokens. So yeah, definitely love playing this card, and I also love this card. Next we have Momentum Breaker out of Aether Drift. Just a really good solid enchantment. You play it, your opponent chooses to sacrifice a creature, and if they can sacrifice a creature, guess what? They got to discard a card. So pretty good. Also another good thing, spell to bounce with your bounce creatures. Really, really good effect. Next we have Case of the Stashed Skeleton. This brings out, you know, a skeleton token creature that's 2/1 with menace, so that's really good. It can't block, but 2/1 menace in the early game, skeleton creature token, you know, your opponent's gonna, you know, you can go a little bit aggro with this deck. And then if they get rid of the creature token, you can crack this and you basically have a demonic tutor, which is really, really good. Or if you want to keep bouncing this or Legion's Landing with your bounce creatures, you're gonna generate a lot of tokens. So I think that's just neat. Next we have Mishiko's Reign of Truth. Yeah, just another card kind of like the Ethereal Armor that rewards you for having a lot of enchantments in play. And next is another enchantment that's really good to target with your bounce creatures, and that's Nowhere to Run out of Duskworn. So if you play the Pixie deck, the Pixie bounce deck in Arena, you're familiar with what this does. And then we have the Bomb of the deck, and that's All That Glitters. Yeah, you enchant your creature, and your creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment and or artifact on the field. So yeah, this is no brainer to play. Alright, so that's all the enchantments and all the spells. Next, we're going to be going over, we're going to be going over all the lands we play. You play Command Tower, obviously. You're going to play, I only play 3 fetches in here, and that's Polluted Delta, that's Marsh Flats, that's Bloodstained Mire. And then our duels, we have Scrubland, the original OG duel, then our Shockland, Godless Shrine, and then Shadowy Backstreet. And then after that, we have Tainted Field, we have Silent Clearing, Concealed Courtyard, Caves of Koilos, and then for this deck, and an enchantment land out of Duskworn, we have our Valgavoth's Lair. For those of you not familiar with this, it's an enchantment land, so it does trigger Valgavoth, because with Victor, you just have to, the enchantment has to come into play. It doesn't say cast, which is good, because you can't cast lands, obviously. But with this one, you know, it's hex-proof, which means it protects you against a lot of like the Ponza effects, a lot of the land destruction effects. It'll protect you from that. Well, it protects itself from that. And then when it does enter tap, but when it does, you add a color, so you're either going to add black or white. You choose a color, you're either going to choose black or white, and then from then on when you tap this, you tap it for a mana of your chosen color. So it's one of those lands, but it has the benefit of being hexproof plus an enchantment land that triggers our Victor. And also, since it's an enchantment land, things like All That Glitters and all that stuff counts towards this for that. And then we have Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Flagstones of Chorkare. So playing this because I think it's a really good card, especially if you're playing against a deck that has like a lot of land destruction against you, like wastelands and things like that. It's your insurance against wasteland and other effects like that. And then Bleachborn Verge, Isolated Chapel, and a Swamp. Alright, so that does it for this deck profile. I hope you folks enjoy it. Please let me know down in the comments section what you guys think about the deck, any changes you might make, any additions you might make, any subtractions, something like that. I love hearing people's opinions on deck profiles and how to like make a deck better, or something that's maybe I didn't think of, or maybe I should consider adding to the deck. And as always, I'll see you folks on the next video.